Hi everyone, welcome to this Java tutorial on variable scope. Today we're going to be processing a variable whose identifier is x. And this is the problem. A main function declares a variable, x. It then assigns a value to the variable, which is a random number between 1 and 10. And it then calls a helper function to evaluate x. Okay? So let's jump into our IDE and see if we can solve this problem. So our main function is going to declare a variable with an identifier of x. It's going to assign a value to x, and then it's going to call a helper function. So we will be designing a modular program. Okay? So let's declare a variable x. Let's assign a value to x. And remember, we are going to be using a random number, so I'm going to use math.random. Now, if I multiply math.random by 10, I'm going to get a number in the range 0 to 9. But if I add 1 to that, my random number range will be 1 to 10. So have a think about that. See if you can figure out what that line of code is doing. We're then going to call a helper function. Now I'm just going to call this function, I'm going to call it evaluate x. Just my own idea, my own creative idea. We're getting a red line here because we haven't defined this function yet. I'm going to do that in a minute. But this is my main function. So let's find some space after the end of the main function, and now we're going to define our evaluate x function. Ooh, there's that funny keyword static again. And let's keep this very simple to get started. When we evaluate this x, we're going to just display its value. All right, okay. Now I'm getting a red line here, but I'm going to try and run the program anyway. Oh, there are some errors. Okay. X cannot be resolved to a variable. Okay, so what's the problem here? The error is happening in the evaluate x function, as you can see. The problem is that we declared x inside the main function. So the only function that can see this variable is the main function. This function, evaluate x, has no idea that this variable exists. Okay? So the scope of this variable is local to x. This is called local scope. You declare a variable in a function. The scope is only within that function. I want the scope of this variable to be the whole program. All of the functions should have access to this variable. So what I want to do is design something that has global scope. So if I declare any variables outside the functions at the top of my class file, hopefully those variables will be available to all functions in the program. So let's do that. I'm going to declare x globally. Now, so let's get rid of that. I'm going to assign a value to that global variable. Now you can see I've still got an error. The error is talking about a static reference, and if you are a novice programmer, this is a little bit complicated, so I'm not going to explain it in this tutorial video. But what's missing here in Java is the keyword static to describe our global variable. Okay. So we've declared a global variable, and my main function can process that variable And the evaluateX function can also process that variable. The variable is visible to all functions. It has global scope. So let's run this program and see if it works. Yes, it works. Yay! Okay. Now, of course, we could, when we evaluate X, create or declare another variable, assign a random number to it, and then I'm going to create another variable, so of course in your programs, if you have some variables which are only being used by one particular function, you can give them local scope. These are local variables, okay? But of course, X is global, so that's fine. This function can see it, it's fine. And we can continue to process local and global variables in a computer program. So have a think about the concepts that have been presented in this video and see if you can design modular programs which use local variables when necessary and global variables when necessary.